want to talk more about this now with Uzoamaka Madu, an expert on Africa-Europe relations. She's the founder of the strategic communications agency, What's in it for Africa. Uzo, thank you so much for being with us. So here's the thing. Both of these men are coming at this from very different perspectives. Emmanuel Macron was barely a teenager when the Rwanda genocide happened. Paul Kagame was a grown man. He was part of a rebel group. He is, of course, a Tutsi. He witnessed the genocide firsthand. He saw his own people being slaughtered. So there's bound to be, of course, some resentment here. What is the best that France can hope for in terms of where this relationship now with Rwanda can go?
Well, I think we've heard from, Kagame saying that, his words were more valuable than an apology. And we've heard in the sidelines of the France-Africa summit, Kagame talking about, this is a step towards, a relationship between France and Rwanda. I think the devil is in the detail. This is one report. This is one visit. And as has been said previously, a lot of the victims from victims' families from the genocide are probably not going to think that this speech was enough. They want deeper research, and for years they've been seeking justice by calling for the prosecution of those guilty of the mass killings, some of whom reside in France and have not been prosecuted. So I think there's a lot of devil that's in the detail, and it's yet to be seen really how this relationship is going to go forward beyond what we've heard today.
So why has it taken a quarter of a century to get to this point in terms of France being willing to acknowledge that it made some mistakes here?
So I think there has been a marked change with Macron's presidency and how he's related to Africa in general. Really look at having some very uncomfortable conversations about the Rwandan genocide, but also about stolen artifacts from other countries on the continent. So I think it's actually a marked change Macron as an individual and as a person. And I think what we've seen from previous presidents is a lot of defense about what had happened in Rwanda during the genocide. A lot of sort of saying that any implication of France in the genocide or role of France in the genocide was not true. And so I think that it just marks a change in the type of leadership that we have that is younger, as you've said, and that understands that these uncomfortable conversations really need to be addressed before you can talk about having a relationship with countries or continents where these very uncomfortable history still exists.
And in terms of sort of France's future role with Rwanda, France has come under a lot of fire because people say they don't do enough to criticize certain dictatorships or autocratic regimes within Africa, that they are looking out for their own interests. Kagame has been in power for 2 decades. The fact that Emmanuel Macron is sort of really desperately trying to change the narrative and really desperately trying to change his relationship with Rwanda, does that mean that he won't be able to criticize some of Kagame's policies going forward?
I think he probably will choose maybe not to in the interest of fostering, this new relationship. As you've said, it's taken so long to get even to this point, which really is the tip of the iceberg, right? There's still a lot of work to be done. So I think, in the name of France, perhaps not. But let's not also forget that France is part of the European Union. It's a very, influential player in that institution. And there are many mechanisms, legal and political, that they use to highlight human rights abuses, rule of law, democracy issues across the world, including in Africa as well. So there are other ways maybe of raising these issues, but maybe not just in France's name.
Yeah, that relationship is very fragile and delicate at this point in time. Uzoamaka Madu, live for us. Thank you so much. All right, still to come, my conversation with the former First Lady of both Mozambique and South Africa. Africa is full of women smashing the